This is just stuff that I see here, but I'm going to show you this one. I haven't charted yet, so I'm going to show you how I look at charts. So basically, I'm on TradingView, free tool. I don't pay for the subscription here. I don't think you need to at all. Basically, I'm looking at the daily, and I use the stochastic and I use the RSI essentially. So what we're going to do here is zoom out. I'm not going to focus on way back there, but I'm going to focus on some levels here. This is Chewy that we're looking at. I personally like this one with all the acquisitions that are happening. Chewy's near a 52-week low. It's got a lot of different things coming on here, as you can see, but we're just basically right now just marking a few key levels. So this one could be measured here, or you could kind of bring it down here, see that that kind of bounced off this pivot point here. But what we're seeing here is this here. So basically, it's coming down here. Why I like it and why I think that we have an opportunity here is when you look at the RSI on the daily, anything above 50 is bullish. So you can see it's curling right at the 50 mark. Stochastics over 50 as well. And you can see in this little fallen channel, really essentially it's near breakout. So you can kind of look at it in a few different ways. You have a falling wedge that looks like it's starting to build out here. You could draw it there. You could come down here, but you can kind of see where I'm going with this. So it got over the wedge, kind of came down here, went outside of it, came back, found a nice little position here. It looks like it's at a breakout point. So how I want to play this one, I think you go call options on it. I'm looking for something like this. And so what I like to do is I like to look back at history and what happens when it gets to a certain level. So you can see this is the breakout point we're looking at. So you could draw it. Essentially, you could look back, you could draw here, you could draw here. I like to go more conservative with my plays because I don't want to get burnt with options. So I'm going to take this over here and let's see where we land. So I think you can get a little more bullish than going all the way out to May. I think you can probably play the January, February, March calls on this for next year. I personally would go 20 for my strike. I like to collect the upside here, and I think you're looking for a move, in my opinion, as long as there's nothing crazy that happens with bad news. But I think you're going to get a move probably up to this point right here. And then I think you're going to see traders try to push the gap. And what I mean by that is you can see here, once it hits this line right here, if we can get over 27, essentially every time it's gotten to this point, it does wild moves. It came down and it went up just as fast here, all the way to 35. I think you could see traders try to push it in this box here. And then what we're going to be looking for is basically them pushing it over the 25 to 27 mark and all the way up to 30. So I think Chewy's a name. I personally like it a lot. I'm looking to own it today. I don't currently own it. The other one I like here is Fisker. I know I alerted it, and those call options seem to have gone pretty parabolic here. We're looking at an open in the green today at a $1.68. These options should already be twice your money from what I alerted on Friday. Why I like Fisker, I mean, it's left for the dead here. Nobody wants it. Nobody wants to own it. But as you can see here, when we zoom out on the daily, we're looking at the daily here. You can see parabolic moves happening. So I'm going to take this move right here, and I'm copying and pasting it. And so you can see essentially it follows this crazy parabolic pattern, and it goes straight up in this line. Look, obviously it didn't go all the way to the top here, but it follows this line. Parabolic move to the line. Watch this. Where basically everything in the market is essentially repeats itself on patterns. Very close here. It obviously deviated a little bit, but it went parabolic to the line. What I'm looking for here is it kind of came down and bounced on this lower portion of the channel. You're looking for two things. Either one, it's going to go straight parabolic like it has in the past. I personally curved mine out a little bit to buy myself time. I don't know if we'll get all the way up here. My target, as I mentioned, is 4 to 5 range. 5 is like optimal. I think you could see this stock if we get traders coming into it. I think you could see them try to push it up to the top wedge here at 4. I personally went with the January $1.50s and I went all the way out to 2025 because they're super cheap. I like the dollar. I like the $2 call options. I think you get 2, 3, 4x upside as long as there's no bankruptcy in play. But I think it's the move is overdone here. I mean, we're talking this was in October, $7, and we're sitting here in December at $1.69. I own it. I personally like Fisker. I think there's upside here. Another one that's priced, in my opinion, for bankruptcy essentially is Farfetch. Farfetch, this stock is one of the biggest fashion retailers, in my opinion, out there. They own Off-White. People are familiar with fashion. They have a big stake in the game. We're going to go with the weekly on this one to take a peek. I mean, you can see here, this was once obviously in the parabolics. We're not going to go and measure up here, but this was fair value, in my opinions, in the 20s for this. It IPO'd, I want to say at 17. I could be wrong there, but it definitely didn't IPO at $1. This is $1.15. There's been rumors the founder's going to take it private. I personally would go shares with this. I think it's literally, it's risky, but I like it down here. You kind of see it's a lot of these charts. If you look at it's doing the essential pattern, I think this is a play out to 2025. I think we could catch some upside. This reminds me of Carvana. And I'll show the chart here just for reference. This is essentially just literally left for dead. I mean, when Carvana got in the threes, everybody said this was going to bankruptcy. Now it's at 40s. I like Farfetch. I own it. I took a couple thousand shares on it. It's risky again, but I think you can probably catch some upside as long as nothing crazy happens like a bankruptcy. I'm looking for a private takeover, in my opinion. So I own shares. The other one I'm watching is the China stocks. As I mentioned, Alibaba. This one doesn't make any sense to anybody. What I can tell you from what I've read in the reports, SoftBank basically, I think it's in March, they basically sold like a net position, essentially. So as long as they don't get blown up, they're trying to keep this thing under 100, ideally by March, and then they're going to let this one go. Essentially, this is Alibaba on the weekly. What I did here is you zoom all the way back to when it basically started trading. I mean, we're in IPO prices essentially right now. We're probably under IPO. But if you look at this box, I replicated it. So basically what I looked at is essentially it coming out of the box and it doesn't move here and it does a stretch. So if you replicate the box out, we're basically coming to the end of what should be this pattern that's replicated way back in 2016. So if we zoom in here, essentially, and copy the previous upside pattern and post it, this is where you're seeing what I'm replicating for waves, or essentially two versions to happen. One, it follows this pattern all the way up. This one takes a breather and comes up. Essentially, we're looking way out 5 years from now in 2028. I think Alibaba's 300 plus. I like it. I own it. I personally went with a couple different strike options I mentioned here, but I own the January 19th. I own the 75 strike. So I'm all the way down here trying to collect some upside if we can get a parabolic move here. The weekly, I mean, RSI and the stochastic here literally bottomed. As you can see, every time we've gotten down to this range, you can see the following couple weeks here is some upside. Same thing down here, same thing over here. It bounces. Essentially, I'm looking for traders to get in this week. On the open today is ridiculous at $70. I'm looking for some upside this week. I personally went several weeks out with the January. I think this is a new year, new you play. I think they're looking for a squeeze to 85 to 95, in my opinion. If we get parabolic over a certain point here, which you can see in the 90s, if they push it, every time it's gotten over the 90s, it's done a gap to 120. It's possible. I've seen some crazier stuff happen in this market, but I think Alibaba call options right now are priced to perfection. They're going to be priced even better today. I'm adding today to my position, and that's how I'm playing this one. I also like the index Queb. I think this one right here is the same similar thing. This, it's coming down. It's the classic pattern as you've seen with many stocks here. ARK especially, if you overlay ARK and all these growth names have taken off, you can see clearly what stage this is in. But this is on the last leg of it's basically came out of a channel on the weekly. It did a little crossover and it's going to bounce. Hopefully, into the new year. We're looking for 30 plus on Queb. I'm playing this one. I went with the 27 call options. I think there's upside here based again. If you look at previous patterns here, if you look back at this pattern, we can do a similar trajectory here. We can look at the rectangle. Essentially, I would look for when it started to fall out, and you could draw here. Let's see what we get. You can see here. So look, I mean, essentially, it's the same kind of sequence you can see. It comes down in the channel. It's basically very similar. Broke down to the lows, tested it twice. You can see here, comes down, forms a channel, does a little retest. This one curved down a little bit more, testing the line one more time. And then we're looking for a little bounce up to the top here, which would bring us to the 35 range. That would be optimal if we can get that. I'm just looking for 30 at this point. So I'm looking for it to come up to here. So I'm looking for a test here into the new year. I'm looking for them to push this. Call options are pennies. I mean, they could literally make this a freaking 30 bagger if they wanted to. It's risky. I think if you really want to play it safer, you go out June to 2025 call options. I mean, with options, time is always your friend. If you don't want to be risky, buy out further. Don't buy the short dates. I typically never buy options unless it's a quick trade. For the weeklies, I like to go personally 4 to 8 weeks out on my options. Another one I like here that I've charted is Neo. I think this one is again, it's priced down here. It's at the sevens. I'll show you what I see on this one. We're looking at the weekly again. I'm not looking at the daily here. It's basically condensed here. It's moved essentially to the pivot point. So you can see here, last time it came to this pivot point and consolidated, we're talking down at the 7 area. We had a huge spike on the weekly all the way to 15. Could it happen? For sure. I like it. I'm playing the January 7s. I think there's definitely some upside to the 10 plus. Potentially, we could get a spike back to 15 again. I'm looking for a couple scenarios here to happen on Neo. I also own the 2025 January calls. I went with the 10 strike, so I'm down here. I'm looking to collect upside. I personally think in the 30s I'm looking for, but I would zoom out here. If you look at the classic pattern that you see, if you Google like stock market cycle patterns, and everyone's probably familiar with this. You've seen it. So it's like you get the different stages that come up. This is where I overlaid all my markers. You come down, you test it. This is what the US stocks look like they're doing here, but except they broke up over the highs. You come down, we're essentially in depression, we're breaking out. Now we're going to go to the next cycles. I think we're going to get 30 plus by 2025 in Neo. I own it. I'm looking for some big upside, and then I'm looking to convert my options into owning the actual stock. It's another one that I own. I'll do one more and then I'm going to open it up for if anyone wants me to chart anything here. This one is part of the ARC names cycle, Zoom. I like Zoom. I'm watching it. I don't currently own it, but I think we can get some upside here. Along with PayPal too, you could argue PayPal is very near explosive points. But basically, I'm looking for Zoom to do one of two things. As you can see here, we're literally at the breakout point to where it could shoot from, if it crosses the 74 area, I think it has upside to 85. I'm looking for it to hopefully hit there in the new year, but also if we can't break it and it has to do a little retest, you're looking at summer. I personally think it's going to this first trajectory. It's also a wedge down here that has formed and Zoom's looking to break out. I think this is a Coinbase all over again. I personally think we're going to go see this at 120, maybe even higher. I like it. I own this one, a more long strategic play here. I'm going 2025 with this. I bought everything from 70 to 100 calls. I think by 2025, I personally see this near 200. It might be crazy, but I'm playing Zoom long. We're on Zoom right now. I use it for multiple companies that I oversee. I think this is really where people are going. They got a lot of cash on hand. I'm looking for an acquisition in 2024. And I personally think that this is basically gearing up. You can see across the 50 RSI, it's heating up. Bulls are in control. Stochastics curling and above, and it's literally about to break out of this wedge. It's crossed over multiple indicators, in my opinion, that this is basically nearing itself to a buy. And I'll post these options of what I'm looking at also in my alert set so that everybody has them and see how I'm playing stuff. But I think this is easier money, in my opinion. Some of these names just haven't caught up. And I'm just going to show real quick before I ask any questions here, just Coinbase to show example. This is the leader of ARC names. This one has completed its cycle in the sense it's done the retest, but you can see here, Zoom is somewhere about right here, in my opinion. So I think Zoom's going to shoot up, it's going to consolidate, and then do another shoot up leg like Coin. So you can see Coin is leading. They're several weeks, if not months ahead of where Zoom is. Zoom is kind of somewhere down in this area. You could argue Square is back here as well. Square's leading Zoom. Square's probably right about here. I'm looking for Square and ARC to come down here. Zoom's here. It's lagging. Coinbase is leading. Looking for Coin to pull back, but they could shoot it through. It's very possible, but this is basically the ARC sequence to show. This is ARC to 70. It's going to probably happen at some point as we go into next year, but you can see here ARC is at a pivot point on the weekly. It's literally near its breakout. So right here is 70 where I'm looking for it. It's consolidating at this point. I think ARC could very well do a path up to 70, 80 range. It's basically lagging the coin move. You can see here, it should go to here, it should come down and retest, and then it should blast off. This is basically the sequence I see of ARC. So if we were to draw this, what I'm thinking is going to happen, it's probably going to come down and do a pullback. And it's probably going to come up to here for the summer. This is probably where ARC is looking. I think you're going to see it at least get to this area of the 70 to 80 range, hopefully by summer next year. While if you look at other names like Apple, everybody's watching, wondering when to short Apple, but you can see here that growth names seem to be gaining momentum where mega caps seem to be topping. So everybody's watching what happens next year. I think you're going to see mega caps potentially sell off where growth takes off. Anyone got any questions?
Can you chart AMD, please?
Yeah, for sure.
Thank you. Oh, good morning.
Good morning. All right, can everyone see my screen?
Yes.
All right, let's go to AMD. Let's take a look here. All right, so we got AMD pulled up. This reminds me a lot of Apple. I think AMD right now, I wouldn't be short unless we get a rejection here, which I'll show. Let's see. So I think what you're seeing here in AMD is a few things, and this is how I would personally trade it. So I'm on the weekly. I'm going weekly with this one just to show what I'm seeing. This is like a lot of mega cap names. So AMD could go one of two ways. You had it here. Let's see. So you had a bull flag, obviously clear cup and handle. Then you had the flag part or the handle. It comes up right to the pivot point. RSI and stochastic. RSI is not max, but stochastic's pretty toppy here. I think you could go one of two ways with this. And also, it reminds me a lot of this, if you look at the stock market cycle patterns, we're getting a lot of weird signals here that I think could happen something like this. You could have a clear rejection. If we break above the 132.50, I personally think you're going to see more upside. I think you could possibly see this go back up to the 155 area. I wouldn't short, in my opinion, until we see a clear rejection. Right now, it looks like it has strength. And I think if it touched 155, I would probably look to short unless we got over new highs. In my opinion, the absolute ceiling I see AMD to hit is 170. And this would be a similar move that you see Apple, that could be lagging Apple and Microsoft, where it did similar look. It came up here, broke the new highs, and now everybody's watching if it's going to fall off a cliff. That's currently where AMD is. It's an interesting point. I think you look at being careful, but I would play it on levels. You got a lot of levels here that are happening. So you could basically trade this on the daily. And I'll show you the daily look. So you see we're in a range here essentially of 132.50, and then 115 is support. It just had a pretty big rally off of support. We're looking here at 132.50, 132.70 area. If we can get over, parabolic moves all the way up to 157. I'm not sure what the option prices are right now, but if calls are on the cheaper side and puts are expensive, you could be looking at a push into the new year where they're going to try to tap this into the 150s if calls are still cheap. I think you could argue something like this would be looking to happen. I also saw on the flow, I mean, it's been pretty confusing flow, but I've seen a few things happening here on the flow where it looks like they sold a lot of Apple and mega cap name bids into the new year, calls at the bid, which is bullish. So if that continues, I think you could see further upside in the market, but I think you'd want to be looking here. If it breaks below 127.23, you can see here we could fall back and actually lower and break back at that 115 mark. So there's really two paths that this could take. The other I'd be watching is something like this. I think you're going to get a catch at this support level. So these are the two moves, in my opinion, that I'd watch for AMD. As you go into December, Christmas time, are people going to sell off the rally and are we going to get a pullback finally? Or are we just going to keep going higher? You could also straddle this as well. You could basically take calls and puts depending on price point. And then based on the move that it happens, you could add to one or the other. I personally like strangling and straddling. I think that that's the easiest way if options are cheap to basically hedge your bet so you don't lose your shirt if you go one way or the other and you're wrong.
And how you are looking SB? Are you looking daily or else day trading, intra trading?
I personally look at mostly the weekly and the daily. I personally don't like getting too risky with options unless it's like price to perfection. What I mean by that is like if you see an oversold bounce opportunity, or if something's going to break through resistance and the weeklies are super cheap, I'll sometimes dip my toes. Mostly I'm looking 4 to 8 weeks out. I don't like to get too risky on the weekly because typically I'm selling covered calls along with a lot of market makers, or they're selling covered puts. So I think most of the time people lose, and that's how people blow their accounts is they go weekly and they go too heavy. I personally like to instead go a couple weeks out. Another one I'm watching it why we have the market open happening right now is SE. I think this one is going to bounce potentially. I mean, it just got basically $5 shave off right here. We're looking 35.73 at the open. This was $40 on Friday. I'm buying calls right here. I'm going out longer. This could dip. Look, it could dip into the low 30s. It could dip in the high 29s. I think it's undervalued, C limited. I'm buying commons. I got a buy order in. If we get under 35, I'm going long on this. I'm also buying long dated calls into the 2025, and I'm going close to the money on this. I like it for a long name. If you're looking for something to put some capital towards, I think C limited is, I mean, we're talking this thing was in the 350s back at the peak. We're now at the price it was back in 2020. And essentially almost near the bottom. I mean, this thing, the lowest it got was obviously in the teens. But I think like this has opportunity. I think this has completed a pretty crazy cycle. And I'm putting some buy orders in on this. Anyone got any questions?
Good
Nope.
morning. Good morning.
Morning.
Could you please chart IWM for me?
Yes, I will.
Thank you.
You're welcome. All right, let's look at IWM. All right, so we got the Russell 2000 ETF here. We're taking a peek here. I'm looking at the daily here. The daily looks bullish. I think what you're looking at this one, I saw also some call options here when I was doing looking at the market here overall. I think you got this clear line of resistance here that you could argue, which is going to be around the 190 range. I think if we can break out above 190, this is a long time coming, in my opinion. You can see here clear support, which is somewhere around here. And then you have another support level that's going to be happening here on the daily that we also had some bounces here down at the 160s area. I think you could put a couple things. You could put a weighted VWAP around here, but you can see we had a clear rejection off of this area. And then we're going to be looking at here.
Alexa, set a timer for 15 minutes, please.
15
minutes, starting.
You're basically having a little channel essentially developing here. I think what you could have happen is we could have a blow up over the 190 area. I think this is going to be looking to probably test 200. If we can get over 190 with the IWM and we can catch the support of 184.30. So what I would do here is move this one up here, and I would be looking to play this range here. So essentially into the new year, if growth continues to rally, I personally would be taking call options. I think you could potentially get a test again into the new year of something like this. But again, we have to clear 190 and you have to catch, and it cannot break this clear support. You also, as a trader, could move it up very to the tipping point and say 186 is the line to be drawn. If it holds this tight, tiny channel, as you can see here, it has to get over 188, 190 area to continue out, and it cannot break this. This is a flag, in my opinion. I think what you're seeing here on the daily is a little mini flag, and it looks like it's going to blow over this. So I personally would probably play bullish on this. And I'm going to look at the weekly here just to confirm. This looks bullish in my opinion. You got RSI up, you got stochastic at the top. I think we could play a little dance in the top area on stochastic. It looks like buyers are stepping in here. I don't know what the call options are. I'm not looking at it right now, but it looks like buyers are stepping in. It looks like we can potentially get a pop test. I mean, just from me speaking about this, it's gone up $1 already since the open.
Thank you. Appreciate that.
Yeah, anytime. Let's take a look let's see what the options say. But yeah, I think if you can get this over 188, I think it's bullish.
Yeah, there is a crazy dump on AMD when it touched like a strong high.
It dumped it.
Yeah, a crazy one, the big candle.
And that's the thing is like, if you just look at these levels on the daily, like let's see what happened with AMD. Essentially, like you can see, like basically, yeah, it hit the top. It hit that 130. It couldn't.
Right.
So essentially, look at what happened last time. It dumped both times it hit this. So you could basically move this and consolidate, and you can see dump, clear dump. And if it continues, it has to, AMD, in my opinion, has to hold here. This was the previous dumping point at 125. It could consolidate here and then break up above. A lot of people, I feel like, are shorting it. And that's where I like, you got two pathways essentially. You got one where, shorts actually take over, this flushes, or you have a consolidation catch. And then this point essentially starts right here. It dumps into December, and then we resume upside into the new year. And then everybody starts to rearrange their portfolios into March for tax season. And then we have a switch up of what's going to happen in the market. But I mean, it's pretty clear that people are buying growth, in my opinion. They're buying growth names. I mean, you're seeing it rally with ARK. And China's basically been left out for the dead here. Fisker looks nice. Fisker's at 170 here.
Any other questions, guys?
Yes.
Good?
Again, can you please give me the support and resistance for NVIDIA?
Yep. This opens up here. All right, so you can see here NVIDIA, basically, I mean, there's a lot going on here. Essentially, what I would do as a trader, you're going to come down here, you're going to look at a few pivot points here. 495 is resistance. You also have a resistance point here at 475. And then you have support here. You have a couple. You have 450. And then if you want to get tight with it here, 468 is the secondary support. So you can see right here, we're in a channel wedge. Essentially, there's two outcomes that are going to happen. One is 468-ish, 467 will break and we'll go down back to 450. Or if bulls kind of take the shorts here and we can reclaim 475, you could see 500 tested again. This is currently like the two scenarios, in my opinion, you're watching.
Okay, thank you.
You probably could get, I mean, I don't know what the options are priced at right now, but you probably could take a straddle position in calls and puts and basically do a 1-to-1 and make some money here. But
Good idea.
looks like they're pushing it right now, though. It looks like, I mean, 470 now, we're up above 470. I think if you get a close right on the line of 475, you're looking for a pop. This market's been unbelievably strong in the last couple of weeks. So nothing honestly surprises me at this point.
Okay, I appreciate that.
Anyone else got any questions?
Yeah, I would like to know about the Tesla, if you can, please.
Yeah, Tesla for sure.
Thanks.
Tesla, everyone's been seeing this one. I think Tesla is bullish without even looking at this one. I mean, you have basically a consolidation here that's occurring. But we do have to be somewhat cautious, and I'll show you why. So the points to watch here on Teslas is really there's a couple scenarios. So it's boiling up. I'm looking for Tesla to reclaim for 245, basically 245, 246. If we can get over there, there's a clear pathway up to 260. As you can see, you look previously in this channel right here between these two lines. I think also you have to be careful of a rejection off of, again, if it comes up to test this area, you could also have a pretty hard rejection that would occur. I'm watching for it to hold. Essentially, it needs to hold, in my opinion, right here at 237. I personally wouldn't even bother with it if it broke, honestly, 240. I think it has to get tight here and it has to go up. If you see an up candle and it closes anywhere near 245, I'm buying calls. I like it. I'm looking for an upside squeeze. I think Tesla is, I mean, it's an ARK name. It's a big position in ARK, and ARK is bullish in my opinion. I think they're going to try to push Tesla up. I'm looking at 260 plus in the new year, as long as it can hold this area right here and push up on strength. Also, you can see back here, I like to look at previous points of what happens in charts. And so basically I'm measuring this point off of you can see here, it broke down. I'm looking at the breakdown point. Essentially, you can do this with a lot of names here, but watch this. So if you take the top of the breakdown range to the bottom, and then you drag this over, look at that. Top of the range pretty much to the low breakdown point. Then we're going to draw a line from the lows here to the top of the range. And we're going to do a copy and paste. And you're going to drag it over to here. So you can see two scenarios, right? It could break up in. I don't think it's going to go that high. In my opinion, I would probably bring it to more realistic down to here. I think you're going to see a couple of things happen, but I'm looking for it to explode up into this area, which is similar to what it did here. Also, another indicator that you can measure with this is going to be price range. Disappeared on me. But I like to do this as well. Hold on. Let's do the day and price. So basically you're looking at so it's right at the end of this box previously. So if you were to drag this box out to the next point, which would probably get you to where I'm looking at here. So basically at the end of the year, you're looking at if we can break this line, I'm looking at 260 plus, and that puts me right at the end of that range. Cool.
Yep. Thanks. Appreciate. Thanks a lot.
Well, if anyone has any other questions, feel free, ping me. I'm going to post some other alerts that I see, as we see them develop here. But I think a lot of the names that I went over, I think you can see here that, there's a lot of promising names still left in the market. There's a lot of names, obviously, that have caught some serious upside. I wouldn't be longing anything that caught like 60% move in the last couple of weeks. I would be looking to scoop up some of the names that are behind in the sequences. So look at the ARK names, look at the sequences. Coin again is leading the sequence, in my opinion. And then I would look at some of the other names. China obviously is in the gutter. I think look at some of those names as well and where they match up in the sequence to the US market. And I'll be posting some of this stuff as the week goes on, and you'll see, my thought process of what I'm looking at.
Cool. Thanks for the call. It really helps every one of us.
Yeah, anytime. Like I said, anyone who's got any questions, feel free, ping me, and then I'm happy to help.
Awesome. Sorry, guys. From next time, we'll make sure everything happen on the Discord. We missed it today. Sorry for the inconvenience.
Yeah, my
Thanks for
apologies.
joining.
Awesome. Talk soon.
Thank you.
Yep.
Thank you,
anytime.
guys. Bye.
Thank
Bye.
you. Bye-bye.
Everyone.
Bye.
Thanks, guys.